What many organization leaders fail to understand is that you can't simply transplant a competitor's talent strategy and achieve the same results. You just can't take plants suited to a warm climate and expect them to thrive in chillier locals. The conditions are too different, but a company that takes the time to examine its own environment, select talent accordingly, and nurture its people will stand tall regardless of economic conditions. Today, my guest Roberta Matuson and I discuss topics such as leadership lessons she learned as a young HR executive, how leaders can find the right people for their organization, why hiring is not a HR function, why it's important for organizations to develop their people internally, and many other topics. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, episode 115, the Evergreen Talent Ideology with Roberta Matuson. Welcome all to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. It's your Chief Leadership Officer, Scott McCarthy, and welcome to the podcast focused on the three domains of leadership, and that is leading yourself, leading your people, and leading your organization. And today we're kind of focused on that last one, leading your organization. Why? Because we're going to be talking about how you can develop your people internally, why your organization and how your organization needs to develop internally. Find the right people and keep them. So it's all about your company, your not-for-profit organization, whatever today. And thanks for coming out. Thanks for coming out and joining us for this 115th episode. From day one, I never thought I'd get this far, let alone the 20 episodes that are actually in the hopper waiting for you right now. So it's a pretty incredible journey. And I never expected that the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast be listened to thousands of people across the globe. Yet here we are, here where you are, making sure that you become a better leader. And today I got a great guest to help you out with that. And that's Roberta Matuson. She's the CEO of her own consulting company, Matuson Consulting. It's a top management consulting firm that was established 20 years ago to help organizations like General Motors, Microsoft, Best Buy, LinkedIn. You might have heard a couple of those, or maybe all of them. Anyway, helping them to achieve dramatic growth and market leadership through maximizing their talent. In 2018, she was named LinkedIn's top voice in management and workplace. And she's got an excellent relationship with MentorBox and a whole whack of other things. She's noted in various press such as, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Working Woman. You get the picture. She knows what she's talking about, and she's here talking to you today. So it's a great episode. It's something that I truly believe in. I believe we need to develop our people internally however we can. And Roberta definitely hits the nail on the head. It's a great show. So you know what? Why don't we just sit back, relax, and enjoy my talk with Roberta Matuson on how you can employ the Evergreen Talent Ideology. Roberta, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So here at Moving Forward Leadership, I focus on three domains of leadership: leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. And today we're talking about finding talent, developing people, getting jobs filled, which really fills into what I would say the third part of that, as in leading your organization. So before we really get into the nuts and bolts of the conversation, how did you even get into this whole topic anyway of, looking for talent, writing a book about it, and the whole hiring process?
Well, I've actually started out as an HR director. Well, I started out in an organization, and after being there for probably 6 months, I was promoted to director of HR. And that was a very interesting experience because I was only 24 years old. So,
oh, wow.
Talk about leadership challenges. I probably would be the definition of that at that time. But, things I was able to remain in that role for 6 years and wound up writing a book about that experience called Suddenly in Charge. And that was my first book. And as the, head of HR, I was responsible for talent acquisition. And that's always been an area that I have a lot of passion about and have had a lot of success in.
So I can't pass up an opportunity here because I had no idea you were HR director at the ripe age of 24. So let's talk about some of those challenges, should we? Quick. And
oh yeah,
what were some of those obvious challenges that came out to you as such a young person in such a critical leadership role?
Well, there were a lot of challenges. The first being that, honestly, I didn't even know what the heck I was doing. So I was learning on the job. I was also managing a team of people, of which some of those people were old enough to be my parents and others old enough to be my grandparents. So there were those challenges of telling people, what they needed to do, and they would just wag their finger at you like you were their daughter. And say, no, I'm not going to do that. And then also really gaining the respect of the other executives in the organization because, they would look at me and they would be like, well, how did you get the best parking spot in the garage? Or why do you have such a nice corner office? Things that I didn't really think about. I was just like excited to have the title.
It's funny. So by day I'm Canadian Army, an officer in the Canadian Armed Forces and Canadian Army specifically. And I remember when I started my first job out of the Royal Military College, and I was surrounded by 3 warrant officers who are members of the ranks. So kind of similar to what you experienced, right? And I remember one of them in particular going around the room like 25 years in, 28 years in, 27 years in, and pointing out all these warrant officers. And they look at me like, how old are you again? And I was like, 22.
Oh, you're the guy who's 27 seconds in.
Right, exactly. 20. So basically making the point of they have more years of experience than I had of life at that point.
Yeah, well, those are challenges.
Yeah, exactly. It's just challenges. So how did you get over some of those challenges?
Well, I don't know if I ever got over all of them, but I made a decision early on to go and to get my MBA. So I went at night and was getting my MBA. And that was so that when I was sitting at the table, I understood what was going on at the table. When they were talking about the financial aspects of the company, I could relate. When they were talking about marketing strategies, like I knew what they were talking about. So I took it upon myself to, go to school at night. And I was fortunate in that my company supported me in that effort. And they also hired a coach for me, which was awesome because he was somebody who had many, many more years experience than I did. And he was able to shepherd me and really help me become the best version of myself.
That's awesome. You don't hear that too often, actually, of companies going out and hiring coaches for their people. So,
well, they're actually doing that a lot more. I'm an executive coach, and I work with a lot of leaders. And the difference between then and now is that today, when companies bring in someone, when they say, hey, we'd like to get you a coach, it's because they think you're really good and they think you could be better.
Right.
Back in my day, usually when you got a coach, it was like, oh, well, this is just before we're going to fire you.
Kind of like looking at it from terms of investing vice paying off a debt, right?
Yeah.
Trying to get the better return vice just trying to save an employee from getting fired.
Yeah. But, it worked out for me. And that's why, today when I coach executives, one of the reasons that I'm so successful with these engagements is that I've been in their seat. I've been in the room. I know what's going on. I know what's happening with office politics. None of this is new to me.
Makes absolute sense. So with your background, your HR background, coupled with that MBA, from your standpoint, we're talking about organizations, companies trying to find the right people. So, and you hear it all the time. I'm sure you talk to executives all the time. I can't find the right people for these jobs. I have openings, I just can't fill them. Yet you go to the other side of that coin is like, oh, unemployment's so high. You talk to individuals like, oh, I just want a better job, but I can't find the right one. I get the interviews, I don't get it, or I don't get an interview at all. So why is it that this mix is having such a hard time? Why are employers having such a difficult time finding employees in the first place?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons. The first reason is they don't really have a strategy. Or if they have a strategy, it's a strategy that they may have put together 3 years ago when it was a much different time. And today, in many places, there's record levels of low unemployment. And as a result, you can't be recruiting with the attitude, oh, these people would be lucky if, I hire them. It's really the other way around. The candidates are like, well, you'd be lucky if I'd come work for you. And so we have this situation where companies are not operating with talent plans that are relevant for today. That's number one. Number two, they're looking for talent where everyone else is looking, which, there's a crowd, right? Everybody wants that young, shiny penny, that newly minted grad, that person that's going to move up, where if they just thought a little bit differently and they dug for talent where no one else is looking, they would come up with some wonderful gems. So, for example, hiring maybe somebody from the military who retired at the age of 40. They've got great skills. They've got discipline. They have literally been in the war. Some of them, they can handle your company.
I like that idea. So you talked about not having a strategy. So what are some of the components out there that actually make a good strategy for recruitment, for finding those people?
Well, first of all, you need to know what the company's strategy is. You have to know what is the strategy. And I was speaking the other day with a client who, actually a prospect, and she said to me, I went to my boss, who's the CEO, and I said, I'd like to see the strategy, the plan. He's like, well, I can't give you that. And she's like, well, why not? He's like, well, we don't have one. So, if you don't have a strategy, right, a strategic plan, it's hard to put together a talent plan because they have to align. If I know what your goals are and where you want to go, and I can look at where you are today, we can work backwards, right? So you've got to get really clear on where you're going, and then you have to figure out who on the team is going along on this journey, who is going to disembark, and then what roles do we need to fill? Do we have people who can grow into these roles? Can we develop people into these roles? And who do we need to hire from outside? It's not that complicated. Yet companies, they just don't invest a lot of thought in the process. But once you do, it's so much easier to then execute your plan.
I really like that, and I definitely subscribe to that type of mentality of having a strategy, planning out, having those vacancies identified down the line. Now, one of the things which I've come across in the past is people suddenly get, I guess, a bit wary, right? They're like, well, what do you mean? When are people leaving? What do you mean? When are they going to retire? When do they plan to leave? So how do you get around that part? Because it can get a bit sensitive, right? You talk about individuals, talk about their livelihoods. Some people may feel like, oh, are you planning to force me out or retire? Force me into retirement or something like that, and get very defensive really quickly. But the reality is, we just want to do prudent planning.
Well, I'm not even advocating that you go that far. I'm advocating that you put the leaders in a room and you say, okay, this is amnesty day. I'm not going to ask any questions. Who on your team, if I gave you a wand tomorrow and I said they could disappear, who would you trade? You're not going to have to go through a long drawn out process. Who would you trade? And let's figure out who the keepers are, who needs more training and development? Can we save some of these people? Are they worth the investment? And who do we need to move out? Because where we're headed is they don't have what we need for the new area that we're going to be in.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I like that. I like that for sure.
But then I'd like to add to that.
For sure.
It's really important that you figure out a way to respectfully transition them out of the organization.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree with that. And I think that's probably a huge point, right? Because you want to show respect to that individual who's given maybe 10, 15, 20 years of their life, maybe 20 minutes of their life to the organization. But regardless, they've still been there and helped you out and been there. So you want to do that in a respectful manner.
Yes, and as I write in my newest book, Evergreen Talent, you also want to make sure that you don't tarnish your employer brand. You know, people, if you do this in a way that really ticks people off, they're going to go on to places like Glassdoor, and they're going to write some scathing reviews. And as you look to hire new people because you're going in a different direction, those people aren't going to give you the time of day.
Oh, that's a really good point. Never even thought about that one.
Yeah, well, you have to, because, you know, what's the difference between your company and my company? It's pretty much our reputation.
Absolutely. So you mentioned something else earlier, which I would also like to dive in on, and that is finding people internally and selecting the right ones for promotions and developing them to take on greater roles down the line. So why is it so important that organizations do this and growing their own people, their own talent internally, and not look for it outside?
Well, if you've looked outside, you know how hard it is to find good people and how competitive it is. And so why not take somebody who has potential, like my company did? You know, when they promoted me, clearly I did not have the skills. I mean, really. But I had the potential. And they saw that and they said, you know, if we invest in her, she could be really great in this job. And I wound up staying for 6 years. You know, they could have brought somebody in from the outside who may have stayed a year or two. You know, maybe they wanted more and the job wasn't enough. It wasn't, you know, the company wasn't big enough or whatever. So, you know, when you invest in people, they'll be much more loyal than when you just keep plucking people in from the outside and then you have to assimilate them and train them in the way you do things.
The top is the loneliest place. Colin Powell said that once. But it doesn't have to be. Instead, you can find people to talk to, people to run ideas by, people to help you figure out solutions to the problems that you're facing right now as a leader. And see, I felt alone once, and I decided to start the podcast. And with the podcast, I decided that I needed to help people like you more. So that's why I started the Moving Forward Leadership Facebook group. Leadership skills for managers to be leaders, not bosses. You can find it at movingforwardleadership.com/group. And come join us. It's completely free for you to join us and talk leadership with us day in, day out. So check us out again at movingforwardleadership.com/group. Now back to the show.
No, I definitely agree with it. It's really hard to find people from the outside, and especially the person inside. You know, they're a known entity. You know what they're like, you know what their habits, their routines are like, their attitudes, how to get along with other people. They know their organization. So why not go ahead and develop them? And I often talk with this when I coach, because I'm a huge proponent of delegation. And this is one of the ways which you can achieve that is through enabling people, give them a taste of what the next level is like, and in developing their skill set to move forward.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a win-win, right?
100%. And you think about it, like it costs so much to hire, and then bring on someone new, whereas someone internally, you don't have that problem. They're already there. You just have to find the right fit for them.
Right. And if you do pass them over, you might wind up losing them as well. So
no, 100%. They may move on. I know too many people. A good friend of mine was about to do that. Actually, he got tired of the job that he was in. He was looking for something new. He was looking for a bigger challenge when he wasn't being challenged in his role anymore, and his company wasn't finding him anything. And he started looking elsewhere. Luckily for them, they got him a position which he was happy with just before he got a job offer from elsewhere.
Right. And today, I mean, those offers are coming in on people's phones. With LinkedIn, there are no more gatekeepers. So recruiters can find employees without having to get the company directory and start dialing and start trying to see if they can get through. So it's really like the wild, wild west out there.
Absolutely is. So with that, we're talking about why it's important to keep people engaged or keep our own talent inside. But in order to keep our people, we need to keep them engaged. So from your standpoint, where does employee engagement fit into this? How can leaders best maximize employee engagement to ensure that they grow their future leaders within their organization?
Well, let's start by defining what employee engagement is. And the way I define it is it's an employee's willingness to go above and beyond the call of duty. And what I see happening with most companies is they look at employee engagement like it's a program rather than an outcome, which explains why companies are spending millions, if not billions of dollars on employee engagement programs, and we're not even moving the needle.
Mm.
So to me, it always comes back to the leadership. And you hear it all the time. People don't leave companies, they leave their leaders. And it's very, very true. And so if you're going to make an investment, then invest in your leaders. Make sure you're very careful who you let into management. Make sure that when you get those people in those roles, that they have the opportunity to, get better at what they're doing and learn how to be true leaders. Get them coaches. Do whatever it takes to make sure that you have a top management team. Because then you'll see that those employee engagement scores will remain high and they'll actually, mean something.
Basically, we want to get people invested into an organization, right? They want to make them feel like they're part of it, make them feel like they have ownership of it, that this organization is essentially a part of who they are.
Right. But you can't, talk is cheap. I mean, I can't stand it when people say, oh, our employees are our most valuable asset. Really? Really, just show me. If you really believe that, you wouldn't have to say it. It would be very evident.
So what are some of those tips for you from your standpoint? How can leaders out there not just walk or talk the talk, but how can they actually walk the walk?
Well, I think it's really important for leaders to, take a personal interest in their team members and, make sure that what's going on, not just in their work life, but caring about what's going on at home, what's going on if they're, working on their graduate degree, if they took a trip, show genuine interest, not just where's the report? Mm. People want to feel like they can bring their whole self to work. They don't want to hide parts of their life. They want to be able to, share their lives at work because they spend so much time there. Leaders can also be sure to provide their employees with meaningful feedback because people need feedback so that they can improve.
Yeah.
I always tell my clients to, ask their employees what their hopes and dreams were when they took this job, and then ask them, did they accomplish their dreams, or do they still have these dreams? And if not, what can I do to help you? What can I do to help you achieve those dreams?
I really
And
like
that to
that.
me is how you get people engaged.
I really like that last bit of what can I do to help you? Because I always say to the audience member there is that your job is to enable your employees, your people to take care of whatever their job is on your behalf. They're the ones that are out there day in, day out at the front lines doing the business and whatever that business is. We have people in the business world. So obviously, it could be sales, could be marketing people. We have nonprofit types that are listening in. So maybe it's going out and canvassing for donations. And some people are just small business owners. It's you're one or two employees, but still all these people are out there taking care of the business at the front end on your behalf, because if they fail, you fail. And I really like that. I really like that point of, what can I do? Because you're helping them help you essentially.
Right. And you're showing them that that you care and that you're interested.
Absolutely. So we talked about your challenges, why employers have difficulty in finding employees, why it's important for them to grow their own talent, and how to be engaged with employees internally. But you know what? Sometimes you just have to go out externally, right? You can't just
absolutely.
Right. So what are some of the best practices from your standpoint of going out, finding these right people and getting them in and at a desk or a seat or wherever and doing the job?
Well, I encourage my clients to turn their entire team into a hiring machine, because in most organizations, the hiring responsibilities are delegated to HR. And right now, HR departments are so overwhelmed with the number of openings that they have, even in their own departments, that they can't possibly fill all these jobs. But if you can picture a scenario where instead of having, your 2 or 3 people in HR or 100 people in HR, you've got, 20, 30, 100, a whole force of people out there recruiting on your behalf, you're going to be much more successful. So you really need to teach everyone on your team how to hire, what to look for, how to approach candidates, how to, present the organization in a light that might make people interested in learning more.
As a guy who preaches about delegation all the time, this is right up my alley, because to me, this is empowering people to go ahead and take care of the job. Because you know what, I, as a manager, I should be the one who's intimately in tune with what my needs and wants are, right? Not some person who is in HR that is working that, because you know what, they are HR specialists. I don't believe HR specialists are hiring specialists. Sure, it could be a bit of a subset, but it's not necessarily really what the bread and butter HR is. You want them to worry about HR policies, how to take care of the people from an institutional point of view, a policy point of view. I should be worried about ensuring that my team has the right assets in place, and that includes people, right? So,
well, I do think there's a reason that they call you a hiring manager.
Exactly, right? You're the person who is looking for that person. So why not roll your sleeves up and be involved in the process right from day one, right to the end of it.
Listen, I can't think of one HR person that if you went to this person and you said, hey, I found a candidate that I think would be great for this job. Can you do me a favor? Can you have a 10-minute conversation with them? They're going to say, oh, no, we didn't find that person. You can't speak to that person. They're going to send you flowers or chocolates. They're going to be like your best friend forever.
Yeah, I definitely could see that for sure. And the reality is, it's like I said, it's in your best interest. You're the one that has the best interest in it. The HR person, not necessarily, right? You're the one that's...
Well, in all fairness, again, they are completely overwhelmed. Their departments aren't usually, overstaffed. And maybe they've got some openings in, on their team as well. And so, it is what it is.
So this is a great point there for the CEO who's listening, right? Have a look and see how this process rolls for your organization. Are you placing the extra burden on the HR department? Can that shift to the hiring managers? Because like we just discussed, definitely should belong there.
Well, I think it has to.
Roberta, this has been an interesting and great conversation. Before we wrap up here, got a couple of last questions. And the first one is a question I ask all my guests here at Moving Forward Leadership. And that is, according to you, Roberta Matuson, what makes a great leader?
A great leader is one who is magnetic. They attract top talent to them, and these people stick around.
Awesome. I like it. I like it a lot. Okay, so the final question is, how can people find you? How can they follow you? Feel free to give yourself a shameless plug. Feel free to plug the books. It's all about you right now.
Okay. You can find me at matusonconsulting.com, Matuson consulting.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn. You can also go onto Amazon or wherever you buy books and download my newest book, Evergreen Talent.
Awesome. For the audience, it's easy for you. As always, just go to movingforwardleadership.com/115. And Roberta, thanks for talking to me about this super important topic. Most importantly, taking your time to talk to the audience who's listening today.
My pleasure.
All right, that's all I got for you fine folks today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed the interview. And most importantly, I hope you got something out of it. And if you did, remember, R squared, S squared, right? Rate and review the show so that it gets a little bit noticed, a bit more. But most importantly, I can help more people, because that's what I'm here for. That's what my guests are here for, is to help more people become better leaders and not being bosses, right? So remember that. R squared, rate and review. S, share the show. Share this show with someone who you think can relate to the podcast as a whole and today's topic. And then finally, subscribe. Subscribe so that you never miss another episode. And you can do that via your podcast playing app of choice through movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. That's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, stop bossing and start leading. Take care now.